Hello, hello. Happy Tuesday, everybody. I pray that you have had a fantastic Tuesday, but you know what? It still isn't over. So if it hasn't quite gotten there, it can still get there by the time you go to sleep tonight. That is okay. But I tell you what, if you declare that today is a great day, it is, no matter what you experienced. So I'm here today, and can you tell I'm excited? I love doing this. I love doing this. I love talking and sharing about recent headlines and what's going on, but also providing some advice and recommendations based on my expertise in leadership change and communication, specifically within the realm of spirituality, spiritual leadership, spiritual workplace spirituality and spiritual change readiness. So, what I'm doing is a response to a recent headline about the national teacher shortage. But before I go even further, let me tell you who I am. My name is Dr. Wanita Mercer, and I am your workplace revival ace and the chief heart leader at Lead My Heart Coaching and Consulting. And so this is just one of the things that we do in order to just be relevant and to help people who are facing challenges and difficulties in the workplace. And certainly this is one of them. And I do want to just start by saying that the shortage of teachers is, of course, the topic for today. But y'all, there's a shortage of employees in every sector. Yeah. Like this is a big deal for every business right now. And so if you're a teacher, if you're an educator, if you're an administrator, this is something that is specifically for you. But I also want you to know for those of you who are hiring right now and working in, human resources and trying to recruit and do all this, and you still can't seem to get the people or you're losing people left and right, this is still going to help you. So please stay tuned. Get some paper, get your iPad or however you take notes, and let's get to it because this is going to be really, really helpful to you all. Okay. So what is the deal? Y'all, I was reading a article. It actually has been several different articles, but this one was particularly with the Washington Post and, just talking about how so many states, I mean, nationwide, are undergoing, or experiencing teacher shortages to the point where I think the article mentioned like Minnesota, California, Texas, of course, were just kind of like the highlights. But y'all, to the point where like they're hiring college students who haven't even graduated to come and be in the classroom. Yes, you heard me. Students, no degree, um, no certification, not even sure if they have a content area in that subject. Who knows? We would like to think so, but that is what's happening. In other states, you also have them calling in veterans who have, I think they said at least 4 years of experience in the military and 60 hours of college credit. Wow. And again, no certifications, specific training and education, but please come be in the classroom, please come teach, right? Um, and other people hiring or districts should I say, hiring subs, and this is definitely something that's happening locally, where it's like, hey, how many subs can we get? Let's increase the pay. Let's get some of these retired teachers and people who have no certification, have a passion for teaching, or those who are just looking for some extra pay right now as an means something flexible. Let's get as many of those people here, and then let's see how many of those substitutes we can recruit to stay full time. This is where we are. It's not ideal, is it? You heard what's going on here, and so what you have are people who are trained or skilled not only in their content area, in teaching pedagogies, for best practices, or even disciplinarians within the classroom and what that looks like, but they haven't been properly vetted. And that's the importance of, teacher education is to be help people understand what the system is like, best practices, and things that is going to help them to be successful and to reach the goal and help them to actually be able to teach, um, and not have this basically glorified basing. That's 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 not what we want to happen, right? But this is indeed a crisis, y'all. And I mean, teachers have quit. They've left. They're changing careers left and right. And we already know about the great resignation that took place across all um, fields and businesses and sectors. Right? Where are people? What are people doing? Maybe they're doing what I'm doing because I um, resigned from full-time teaching. I did, but is calling me into a new season of my life to do this. Now, can everyone say that? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe not. And some people just got fed up and quit. But the point is that this is happening. But who's asking why? Who's asking why? I saw another article about businesses saying basically we'll pay you um, by the day. Like, if you just show up to work, we'll give you a full day. Oh my gosh. Isn't this like um looking for people to work on a corner, right? And saying, "Hey, we need something built. Come, if you can work, we'll give you cash." Mm, is this where we're going with this? Um, and not to say that there's not need for that, for need for people to just work and get a job done. But we have to acknowledge the fact that this is not ideal. But hey, a day's pay for a day's work, yeah, that's biblical. Um, waiting 2 weeks, waiting a month to get paid, mhm, that's biblical, but I will say a day's pay for a day's work is certainly biblical. Certainly something to be grateful for. But, this is the nature of what's happening. But more articles talking about what's happening and why it's happening, right? And so that's certainly a gap that I'm wanting to feel as I, get to getting more doing more research and having to understand why it's happening, not just what is happening and what's the response to it. Because too many people want to respond to what is happening without responding to why it's happening. Okay. And the response needed is not to the what, it's to the why. And so let's understand that. So why is this happening? Oh, there's so many different reasons, with my over 14 years in education, I could tell you why it's happening. I think all of us could, right? Um, but there's so many things like the pandemic, right? Exhaustion from that, from just being thrown into online teaching and then now being thrown back into the classroom and dealing with all of the gosh, students who y'all, let's be honest, and as well as teachers, well, we can't dismiss them simply because they're adults, and that already happens too much, as if we have problems, right? Um, we do, and then we try to work with those problems. Oh, that's a whole nother thing. But let's be honest here. Students as well as the teachers have experienced trauma through the pandemic, neglect, rejection, poverty, having to make really difficult decisions that you hope people would never have to make. That is what has happened. And then you throw everyone back into the classroom without proper therapy, without properly addressing that as a society. Um, that's the truth of what's happening, y'all. Um, And then we see people having short fuses, how, they're responding erratically to something that, is happening that doesn't warrant type of response. But that's because people are just trying to deal in a way that is healthy. Low pay, come on. Yes, we know this. We know teachers only get paid for what they do in the classroom. Yeah, that's what I said. Teachers don't get paid for what they do outside of the classroom. We only get paid for standing in front of the student. That is as much as you could expect for 50, 60, $65,000. Okay? That's not all of the hours of planning your lessons. That's not all of the follow-up with students and their parents. Okay? That's not all of the necessary training. Oh, and learning. Come on, because we have to realize that teachers also have to learn some things in order to teach it. Okay, you don't want to admit that? I'll admit it for you. Yes. We're learning in between too, because we want to be able to provide the best teaching for our students. And sometimes from week to week or month to month, depending on the curriculum, that requires some learning. Okay. And so all of this is taking place just to be able to stand in front of students and deliver a 45-minute lecture or lesson. Okay. Um, so again, we're working about 9 months of the year, and then that money spread over 12 months. Um, yeah, and and that pay is for what you just do in the classroom. So, that also doesn't include, you wanting to support your students in extracurricular activities and being there and supporting them in that time, either as an administrator or their teacher. So I said all this, educators, you understand this, but for those of you who are trying to understand why this is happening and watching this video, um, in education, I wanted to tell you that because I think sometimes we think that teachers just complain about pay just because it's a fun thing to do or something or catchy, and that's not the case. So that is another reason why. Lack of respect from stakeholders. Y'all, this is happening. Lack of respect from the students, lack of respect from parents, lack of respect from administrators, okay? Even for the role and all that it requires. Um, Even the dismissal of all that's the weight that teachers carry. It's just that sense of lack of respect. Increased harassment? Y'all, look how many instances of teachers being assaulted. I personally know teachers and administrators who are assaulted in just the last 12 months. It's happening, y'all, from kindergarten up, bullying. No, and I'm not talking about the students bullying each other. I'm talking about students bullying teachers. And I kid you not, y'all, I sat in a bullying, I guess you want to say it was an address. It was more of an address because in this type of in this situation, it was the district's lawyers and defense team who were coming and talking about this to staff. And I'll never forget them talking about bullying. And an educator raised her hand and said, "But what do we do in the instances where it's a student bullying an adult?" And what the lawyer's response was? That doesn't happen. Oh my gosh. The room was like, "Okay, we see what this is. We see what this is now." That was the response. And then other administrators jumped in and was like, "No, no, no. Bullying does not happen between, adults and kids." Okay. Clearly you haven't been in the classroom, right? We know that this happens. Now, you might want to have a different words for like harassment and things like that, but if you look what students do to other students, whether it's cyberbullying or, constantly teasing, or making type of statements that causes securities or something like that, y'all, that is happening with students and adults all the time. Violence against teachers. Okay, again, not just the words and things, but actually throwing things at teachers, hitting teachers. It's happening. So teachers are like, you know what? I did not wake up hoping today that I would get assaulted by a seventh grader. You know, um, and they're saying I need to be here for my own children. Why would I continue to put myself in this position, this situation? Then greater restrictions to curriculum, because believe it or not, teachers are very passionate about what they teach and how they teach it and the content. That's why they wanted to go into teaching to begin with. Um, and so one of the reasons is to restrict teaching about history or teaching about social issues and things like that. Then you begin to kind of impede on what they feel is their calling. And something that they hold in high esteem and value. And so that's already depressing morale. And then also unsafe working conditions, whether it's with the pandemic or heightened violence at the school. That's just a reality, and we all know that. Increase of unreasonable demands. Yes, yes, and yes. Um, and we're going to see this even more this year because of the teachers who stay. The ones who chose to stay, y'all, are going to have some of the most unreasonable demands placed on them. And it's unfortunate because they're the ones who chose to stay. And so, for those administrators who are watching, please take that to heart and know that you cannot afford to make the work and environment a place that people continue to come to, especially for those who are already on the brink. Because let's be honest, the ones who stayed probably are the ones who just don't have the years of experience yet, who still want to probably qualify for loan forgiveness and still need more years. Um, they're the ones who probably didn't hear back from a job in time or something fell through. Okay. And then you have the small group of people who actually love working there, feel called to this school, to the district, and love the setup that they have. That's very few. Okay. So being aware of that, because let me tell you, what's happening is that we're not leading people where they are. We're leading expectations, we're leading hopes, we're leading dreams, but we're not leading people and where they are. And to do that, to lead the heart, we have to acknowledge where people are. Um, and so the political constraints as well that's going on with different policies. And I know that administrators more than ever are feeling like their hands are tied, like they just can't do everything that they would love to do, implement every answer they feel like they have. And so educators understand that too. That, as administrators, they also find themselves in difficult positions, trying to appease, the district administrators as well as um, satisfy teachers, and that is a very difficult place to be. Whereas some principals have a lot of autonomy when it comes to their schools. Let's be honest, more and more districts have changed that in the last few years where they don't have as much autonomy. Okay. So that's something that needs to be considered from both sides. And then also the general idea of refusing to change the system. You know, I have often said that The whole statistic that about 70% of organizations' efforts to change fail has been debunked. I think the true reality is that probably about 70% of organizations just refuse to change. They just have to stay with status quo, like as if anything changing would kill them or just destroy everything. And sometimes it's the very thing that you're trying to keep, that you're trying to not stray from, that you're trying to follow because it's always been done that way. It's tradition. No one bucks against that. It's the very thing that's hurting you. And so um, we have to see this as an opportunity. And that opportunity is to change something that is not working. Okay. So I also want to say, hey, education agencies, we have an emergency. And it's not to take away from the efforts that education agencies make every day, to make education systems better, to advocate for teachers and students, is not to take away from any of that. But we have to admit that we got here because something wasn't working. Perhaps the strategies and things in place aren't as relevant as they should be. Right? And so this is just a personal challenge to, people in education agencies and departments to really come back to the drawing board and say, okay, you know what? This is a state of emergency. We have to do something different. Okay, what is that? And I say, I want to tell you that you're not going to find that out among yourselves. This is an opportunity to collect data, to talk to people, to hold focus groups, to hear from people who are leaving so that you can understand why this is happening so that you can respond to that. Because the truth of the matter is, already underperforming education system got is getting even worse now. Um, Math and reading, not on level. Hasn't been for years. Really no foreseeable changes to rectify that, especially now with this teacher shortage. Our students are only going to suffer more and more. So where does that leave us? You know, um, we have to do something because our students deserve better. They deserve better. You know, when you think about the importance of the education system into what these kids become, it puts things in a whole new perspective. Y'all, this just isn't a glorifying childcare system, right? But what we're expecting is for students to go to the education system, go to school every day to a safe place, and learn the necessary skills that is going to help them to become well informed citizens, adults that can make, good decisions, and to help them at work, right? Because let's be honest, the same students who couldn't read on level in school and do math on level in school, they're not adults, okay, who have difficulty reading material at work, who have difficulty writing material at work, who have difficulty doing simple math. I mean, do we understand the importance of rectifying this now, right? Not just the hoping and wishing and let's just get bodies in here, you know, but really saying, y'all, we have to do something different and not being afraid of that. So I do want to introduce to you I think it's just three theories of dissatisfaction to consider with this scenario that we're facing, this challenge. And this is applicable to not just education. In fact, none of these are education um, theories of dissatisfaction. They're birthed out of psychology, sociology, and so from that context, they can be used in organizations as well, right? Because organizations are living, breathing. They're small societies um, that we have to learn to thrive in. And so here are the three. The first one is Edwin Locke's range of effect theory. And with this theory, is basically saying that our values inform and set the expectations for our workplace, for the work that we do, what we hope to achieve there. And the more they manifest, meaning the more we see our values become reality in the workplace, the more satisfied we feel. Can you relate to that? Right? You know what I say about theories and models? It's a quote that I like to repeat, and that quote is, all of them are imperfect, some are useful, right? Or all of them are wrong and some are useful. And so even with this theory, even though it may not be perfect in every situation or applicable to every context, there is something that we can get here to the fact that the more I see the things that I value manifest in the workplace, the more satisfied I will feel. And so the opposite is true. The less I see my values manifest in the workplace, the more dissatisfied I will feel, right? And then the second one is John Stacey Adams' equity theory. And I've talked about equity theory before, but this one is from a different perspective where looking at the exchange of inputs and outputs from the standpoint that your job satisfaction and your motivation comes from the balance, okay, of you input as the employee and your employer's output. So you're putting in hard work, you're putting in skills and talent, your education and dedication and commitment, all of that. But if you don't see an equitable balance or fair balance between your employer compensation, um, scheduling, uh, benefits, and understand respect, and those are soft skills, honesty, transparency, right? What do you think is going to happen? You're going to become more and more dissatisfied. Okay. Now, are we seeing the education? Absolutely. And you can probably relate this as well from your own personal perspective that putting in all of this, right? You've given all a massive amount of input and you're seeing just the minimum output. And you're just like, nah, I can't do this anymore, right? And then the third one is Fastinger's social information processing theory. I'm sorry, Festinger, not Fastinger, Festinger. And this is talking about the fact that people form a picture of reality. They form their opinion. They form um their I'm trying to give it another word. Their opinion, I guess, is good enough. Of their own work or the value of their work based on other people's opinions and what they say. Think about that, right? So with educators, there's always been a lot of talking for years, come on, for decades, right? About teachers don't really do this, or teachers, they could do more, or teachers, um, they're not really qualified, or all the talk that we hear. And so what happens is that people begin to form their own opinion about themselves and what they do based on the social interaction with their coworkers. So other disgruntled coworkers, we internalize that. Opinions from family and friends, we internalize that. Opinions from society, politicians, right? We internalize that. And so these are three very key, important, crucial theories of dissatisfaction that we should consider. right? And how we strategize, make the decisions that we make regarding education in any job. But what do they all have in common? Values, right? What people value, even when it comes to internalizing what people say about you, is because like you value their opinion, right? You value what they say, you value that person's role in your life to where what they say matters that much more. Okay. And so that's the value that we have. And then also social exchange. So not only looking at inputs versus outputs, but that's a social exchange between you and your employer, right? Or you and your employee. But the social exchange between those and the people you interact with. Okay. And so even the social exchange between your values and what you want to see manifested in other people around you. Right? We have to consider that social exchange and then the interaction of both values and the social exchange. So, again, I really push spirituality and my expertise in leadership change and communication. And so I want to take a moment in the context of all of this to talk about what are the implications of spiritual leadership in this crisis of the teacher shortage. Well, what it tells us is that administrators are not intrinsically motivating and inspiring teachers through hope and faith and love. I know. I know you're probably like, oh God, here she goes with that touchy feely stuff. Yeah. And the main people who complain about the touchy feely stuff are the most dissatisfied because they don't feel heard. They don't feel respected or appreciated, right? They don't feel a connection to their work environment. And you know what that is? Touchy-feely stuff. Uh-huh. Because you have a human spirit that needs to be nurtured. That's what's crying out. And so what it tells me from this crisis is that we're not in motivating people from a place of hope and faith. And that's important. We all hope for something. That is the core of who we are as human beings. And until we acknowledge that, we cannot lead the heart. And that is what's most important. People's hopes, their faith, what do they believe in? What do they hope for? What do they want? What do they desire? Right? But then also love, to truly love people, to care for them and to know what that looks like. What does that feel like in the workplace? And that's often words we don't want to talk about, or this isn't the place for it. Absolutely, it's the place for it because that is where you spend most of your waking hours at work. Do you not want to feel loved at most of your life? Do you not want to experience hope and faith most of your life? Because to say that you don't want that in the workplace is to say that you don't want that most of your life because you spend one third of your life asleep, one third of your life at work, and one third of your life doing everything else. Yeah. So it's important. And so that tells me that that's not happening in the hopes of serving students in the school better. It also tells me that admin are not nurturing teachers' calling and ensuring membership, which is, again, two core pieces of the human spirit that have a sense of calling and purpose and to feel like we belong, right? That we belong to someone, we belong to something, we belong to a place. And that's that membership. And that tells me wasn't nurturing this because a lot of people no longer have a sense of purpose as it, and a lot of them like they no longer belong as a part of this sector and system or workplace. It also tells me that administrators are not creating congruence between the values and the vision, values of themselves and people. But my question to you is, do you what your people value? Do you know what your teachers value? Do you know what they desire, what they want to see, what keeps them waking up and coming to work every day, what they find joy in? And if you don't know what people value, not just the organizational values, because until you know what they value, do they even align? Have you thought about that? Have you asked yourself that? Do the values of your teachers even align with the values of the organization, or do you just kinda hope they do and leave it there, right? Um, Again, it's important because if you don't know what the values are and then find a way to align them and help people connect with them, then how do you build congruence between vision and values, where you're headed, where you're going, right? And then your mission of how you carry out everyday duties to get to that final destination. How do you make that happen, right? So those are key pieces. So also, what does this crisis tell me from the workplace spirituality perspective? And workplace spirituality is not about religion in the workplace. No, it is about feeling a sense of connection to your purpose and your identity in the workplace. Okay. And so this crisis tells me that neither administrators or the educators, okay, understand themselves as spiritual beings. I mean, really, that's what it says. To me, you don't understand that. And it's so important to understand that God created you as a spiritual being. Even if you don't believe in Him, He believes in you. It doesn't matter whether you believe God created humans and whether He has a place in the world. It doesn't matter because at the end of the day, you still know that you are spirit, that your spirit can be built up, but it can also be crushed, right? It can be full of joy, but it can also be full of sorrow. And so until you recognize that you are a a being, you are a spiritual being with the need for calling and membership, then how can you build your work around that? How can you build strategy around that? But it also tells me that you're not experiencing a sense of belonging where you are, which has a lot to do with first how you see yourself. Because until you understand yourself and who you are, how can you expect others to embrace you and welcome you into community? Gosh, I could spend a whole 45 minutes talking about identity in the workplace, and I will. I'll get to it one day, um, because that's important when we're talking about membership in the workplace and that sense of belonging and connectedness. But it's so important for you to feel that way, and it tells me that you don't, right, in the crisis. So then what does this also, mean for spiritual change readiness? And spiritual change readiness is my theory based on my doctoral research of, workplace spirituality and the relationship with attitudes towards organizational change. And what I found in that study was that people who experience a sense of engaging work, meaning calling and purpose with the work that they do, as well as a sense of community, right? Sound familiar? Calling and membership, right? With spiritual leadership. Here we go. We're seeing it again in regards to being ready for change in the workplace. Okay. And so people who experience greater engagement and sense of community in their work had greater acceptance towards change and less fear and cynicism towards change. And that's so important to know. And so if you want people, your teachers, to be more open and accepting of the change that has to happen in order to navigate this crisis, then, okay, they have to experience engaging work and they're not. That tells me that right now they're not. that people are losing the sense of calling and purpose in what they do, that what brought them into education is not keeping them there. So, how do we help people get back to why they came to education? Right? As to how do we help people get back to the feelings of hope and the dreams and the passions that they once had that helped them get up in the morning and come to work even though it was going to be hard and challenging? But also, again, not a sense of community and belonging. So, do you get my point now? The importance of people experiencing calling and purpose, but also a sense of belonging and community? It matters in such a big way. And so, knowing all of that, these are my recommendations for school leaders. Number one, you need to tap into your own spirit. Okay? Get back to that because your spirit. And until you acknowledge that and begin to nurture your spirit in your own capacity by leading your own heart, right? And understanding what that is. And sometimes that begins with discovering your purpose. Perhaps you haven't. You still might be feeling like you're just kind of going with the flow of life. And you're still searching for purpose. You're still trying to understand God's plan for your life. That's where you begin because until you understand that, how can you help build and nurture that in someone else? And so, my prayer for you are those who haven't yet identified your purpose or calling, not just within the sector of education, but maybe even the school you're at, or the district that you're in, or the subject that you're teaching, that you find that. And so begin to pray about that and also examine your own sense of membership and community within your workplace, within your school. Okay. Do you truly feel like you belong there? Okay. Number two, break the mold and then create something new with the pieces. Break the mold, y'all. I feel like God is trying to do such a new thing in every sector. And I think that's why all of these problems come up because the more problems, the more opportunities. Okay. And so maybe it's the old way that's hurting you. The same way of recruiting, the same way of scheduling classes, the same way of building curriculum. Maybe that's the problem. So maybe you need to break the mold and then, hey, say, okay, these are the pieces that we have. What can we do with this? Okay. And then number three, truly see teachers and listen to them. That's so important to truly see teachers. See them as not robots, but human beings. See their heart. See that they desire to do more. They desire to be the best teachers, but are right now completely overwhelmed. Okay, and perhaps even underqualified to do the job. See them. Listen to their concerns, listen to their struggles, their challenges, and then properly respond to them with love. And again, I know that's not a word that makes us comfortable sometimes in the workplace, but it belongs there. You deserve love, and so do they. Love them, care for them, be honest with them. Everything you would expect love to look like and feel like in your life, that's what you need to provide for your employees. Okay. And then number four, be reasonable in the moment. I know sometimes you're afraid to implement new things because they just seem unreasonable, but you're in a crisis right now. And so the reasonable thing to do is to be reasonable in the moment. Okay. And realize this may not be a permanent change, but right now it's what makes sense to do. And that's reasonable. And so don't get locked into, oh gosh, it's crazy to think it will always be this way. Yeah, it is. So don't let that stop you. Do what's needed right now in the moment. And then number five, be the admin that you'd want to work with. Yeah. Right. Think about how you are, you know, leading your coworkers, your colleagues. Are you being the best admin for them? Are you being the best admin for your teachers? Be the admin you would want to have, right? Who would you want leading you during this crisis? And then be the admin that you would want for your child's school. That's important. How you want to handle things and respond to things. How transparent will you want them to be? And that's what you need to do. And then my recommendations for educators. Number one, tap into your spirit too. That's just not for the admin, for the leaders. You are a leader too in your classroom. You're a leader of yourself, right? And so tap into your spirit too and discover your calling and purpose, right? Remember why you wanted to become a teacher. Get back to that, explore that. Right? What can you grab hold to for this year to get through what is going to be a tough year? Okay, um, but to make sure that you can still thrive, and also examine your sense of membership at your school or in your department. And then if you see misalignments, address those with your administrators. Okay, communicate those in the most respectful an understanding way, knowing that they are overwhelmed right now. Um, but please do that because there's also shortages in leadership as well. Okay, and so you have admin who quickly had to move into places, who are still learning the ropes. And so if you have people like that at your school, be kind. Okay, be kind to them because they're undergoing a lot of stress as well. Number two, be open to change by aligning the outcomes of change with your personal goals and values, right? Remember the whole spiritual change readiness, right? You must have engagement with your work. And so think about if my goal is to be the best teacher I can be, how is what they're presenting going to help me be able to do that? And then hold on to that. Okay. And then number three, during this tough year, prioritize your well being and your family. No one else can do that for you. Your admin can't prioritize your well being. They should, but you should put it in their hands. You know what I mean? That's up to you. Prioritize your well being and your family because then no one else can do that but you. And so make the commitment that you'll do what you can. But there's a point where you begin to compromise the well-being of yourself or your family that you speak up, okay? And compromise some things to help them still reach their goal, but it's also not putting you out. Find that compromise. And number four, be the educator you'd want working for you. Okay. And I know that sounds simple, but sometimes we don't think about that when we're barking at people and saying, well, you're not doing this and you're not doing that. Well, how would I want my teacher to address this with me as their leader? Be the teacher you want to have, right? For your students that, you know, if they were going through a tough and stressful year, would you want them coming into the classroom with an attitude or talking about how stressed they are or how horrible things are, um, really depressing the classroom environment? No, right? Be the colleague you want. So, do you want someone who's always being negative that when you're trying to enjoy your lunch break, here they come dumping all their frustration on you? Or would you want to find some moments of encouragement in what you have to say, some moments of laughter and joy? So let's think about that. Again, facing a very difficult year, but what is it that you can do to take control of how you react to it? Okay. And last but not least, for administrators and educators, use your superpowers, and that is prayer and discretion. Pray, pray, pray without ceasing. Pray about everything because you know what? You can't do it on your own. You don't have all the answers. So pray for God to give you the wisdom and guidance to make the right decisions, to love people the way that they deserve to be loved, to guide them, and to be a leader with integrity, a teacher with integrity, right? Be able to provide students with what they need and to only increase. Um, the education curriculum, not decrease it, even in the middle of a crisis. But also use your discretion. Yes, all of us feel like our hands are tied with something, but you know what? You still have that superpower of discretion that you have a little bit of wiggle room that you can work with. You can do amazing things and with that little space. So let me tell you, use your discretion to make things happen and make things better for you and the people around you. Okay. And the final thought, okay, is for every great problem, there is a great opportunity. So, even in the midst of this crisis, there is a great opportunity to recruit people who maybe education or the lack of skills was standing in the way, but they have a great passion for children and education, and now they'll have a motivation to go and get the skills and certifications that they need. That is a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity to tear down traditions and things the way have always been done and start something new and fresh and amazing, right? It's an opportunity to serve students in a way you never have before by thinking creatively. It's a great opportunity for loving people and showing them what perseverance looks like, even in the midst of challenges. So let that be your mindset. Okay, that as you're taking on this challenging year with shortages and people with lack of training and skills and education, remember that they're there. And that's still a team of people for you to work with and make wonderful things happen. Okay. So, y'all, that's it for today. I've held y'all for like, I think 52 minutes. Oh my gosh. But I pray that you found this informative and helpful. And what were the two things that you need to focus on? Calling and membership. Okay. In every strategy, how do we nurture people's calling? And how do we ensure people have membership with everything that we do? I just want to also let you know that, let me take the logo off there so you can see. Cool. That starting August 15th, I have a new series for this month. Every month I do a series, and this month's series is Cheers to New Beginnings. If you can see it, you can achieve it. And so, what we're talking about is how to start new projects, new initiatives, new programs. And I'm super excited about it because, as you can tell, I love what I do. And all I want to do is to help you achieve your goals and everything that you want to do in your organizations, in your personal life, your family, because I teach all of this in a way that you can just pick it up, take it, and run with it. Okay. So we're still talking about project management. I have been for the past 2 months. And I think we have definitely this month and then maybe even September in the process of managing and monitoring our projects. Okay. So please join me for that. August 15th through the 22nd, only weekdays at 12 noon Central Time, going live on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Check it out, okay? And then also be sure to follow me on social media and Lead My Heart for leadership tips, upcoming events, and all great things that we're doing to help you be everything that God has called you to be in the workplace. So check out Lead My Heart 2022 on all social media. And y'all, that's it for today. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. And remember, in everything you do and with everything you have, love God and love people. Goodbye, y'all.